Maybe you white balance? Or are you good? Fine.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you. Good, thank you.
Thank you, everyone. We are going to start. My name is Osman Ahmed, Osmanahmed. I'm the Director of Advocacy at Cair, Minnesota. We are here today to talk about the Cair Report 2024, and I have my colleagues here, Associate Director Charan Hussein, and also our Civil Rights Director, Alex Shah. And we have a community member and librarian and community activist, Ruqiyya Abdi. So just to start with that, we're going to have Alex to just explain the report and to give you more details. And we sent to you the report in the link. So if you have any follow-up questions, get back with me and our team. Thank you. Alex.
Good afternoon. My name is Alex Shaw. It's ALECSHAW. I'm the Civil Rights Director here at Cair, Minnesota. Today marks the release of Cair's 2024 Civil Rights Report, titled Fatal, the Resurgence of Anti-Muslim Hate. The report documents a troubling rise in Islamophobia and anti-Muslim hate incidents in the United States. In 2023, Cair chapters around the country received over 8,000 complaints of anti-Muslim incidents, marking the highest number of complaints Cair has ever recorded in its 30-year history. Nearly half of all complaints received were reported in the final 3 months of the year. These figures represent a 56% jump over the year 2022, an increase that surpasses the period following the implementation of President Trump's Muslim ban, which saw a 32% jump over the previous year. The primary force behind this wave of heightened Islamophobia was the escalation of violence in Israel and Palestine in October 2023. Employers, universities, and schools were among the central actors suppressing free speech by those who sought to vocally oppose Israel's genocidal onslaught on Gaza and call attention to Palestinian human rights. The 2024 report documents increases in employment discrimination, education discrimination, banking discrimination, hate crimes, and other categories of discrimination. Across the country, activists for Palestine have been doxxed, harassed, and lost their jobs. We've seen colleges and universities stifling Muslim and Palestinian student organizations. And in Chicago, a 6-year-old Palestinian American boy was stabbed and killed by his family's landlord in an act of anti-Muslim hate. Muslims in Minnesota have been experiencing this rise in Islamophobia that we've seen nationwide. Since October of last year, Cair, Minnesota has seen increased reports of targeting and harassment. Since last October, we've heard from community members who have been denied service in stores or have been harassed by store employees. Minnesota Muslims have been verbally and physically attacked in public just for being visibly Muslim. We've heard from Muslim students who have been pulled out of class and threatened with discipline or expulsion if they continue to exercise their free speech rights in support of Palestine. We've heard from Muslim employees who have been questioned by human resources at their job about posts that they've made on social media in support of Palestine. Some employees have been pressured to sign petitions in support of Israel or to donate to Israeli organizations. Many more students and workers have been afraid to express their support for Palestine when their schools or their employers have issued one-sided statements of support for Israel without acknowledging the ongoing suffering in Gaza. This increase of anti-Muslim incidents that we've seen in Minnesota and around the country in the last few months of 2023 has continued into 2024. We continue to receive a high volume of reports from people around Minnesota who have experienced Islamophobia and racism. We continue to hear from community members who are scared that because of their Muslim identity, they fear being bullied in school, harassed at work, or even targeted with physical violence. Even before last fall, we had seen a record number of attacks against mosques in Minnesota in 2022 and 2023, including vandalism and arson. These trends are deeply concerning. The findings in this report demonstrate that, even amid moments of perceived progress, Islamophobia persists as an underlying force that is always capable of reemerging to significantly impact the lives of Muslims and those perceived to be Muslim. The report contains recommendations for addressing this troubling rise in Islamophobia, including calls for the U.S. government to tie policing funding to the submission of hate crimes data, calls for state and local governments to continue the trend of accommodating Muslim religious practices in America's routine faith landscape at the same levels as other faiths, and calls for public officials at all levels of government, corporate leaders, and those speaking on behalf of places of education to respect free speech on Palestine and the value of human life. Thank you.
And now I want to call on Chiran Hussein, Executive Director of Cair, Minnesota.
Alec, our Civil Rights Director, outlined some of the key highlights of this report. Today, I will share with you some additional information, and particularly some aspects that are not highlighted in this report. First and foremost, here at Cair, Minnesota, we have seen an unprecedented level of requests for our services. And I'm sadly to report today that we are unable to respond to the overwhelming sheer request for help in the way that our team and office can. We are triaging and doing the best that we possibly can by providing the best available resources, guidance, and support. But that is not even the worst part of today's declaration. I'm here to also declare that while this report announces over 8,000 incidents, every single day at Cair, Minnesota, and in this past month of Ramadan, when we have been traveling across the state and engaging with the Muslim community on a nightly basis, we are learning about the countless number of incidents that have taken place that no one is reporting to law enforcement and are being underreported and not even being reported. In one incident, I learned of an individual in our community who was physically assaulted by someone who clearly spewed hate. And in that physical assault, this community member, who was about his day shopping in one of our stores, was assaulted in a way where he was needed not only 6 months of healing, but had to wear preventative medical device for those 6 months. That incident was never reported to law enforcement, while there was a clear witnesses that saw the incident at a very busy store. We are hearing from many other incidents, including students at both high schools, middle schools, as well as college, who are also reporting incidents that they are not reporting to the community. And many are even afraid to report it to Cair, Minnesota. As well as one of the things that we are noticing is, for the first time, community members who have historically been supported and created a welcoming and inclusive environment to have completely lost every and all aspects of that safety and inclusivity. And in fact, the departments that are often there with the title of diversity and inclusion in corporate America here today are failing to even adequately listen and hear their Muslim employees. We've heard from many Muslims who work in corporate America today who have seen the clear discrimination, bias, and selective punishment toward only Muslim staff. We are hearing from many people who have seen the rise and uptick of bullying, discrimination, and that has increased both in person and as well as online. Additionally, as Alec mentioned, Minnesota continues to be leading the nation in attacks against mosques, with 8 incidents in 2023 and 9 incidents in 2022. We have now seen the destruction of mosques that equates to over nearly $1 million in destruction due to all of those attacks. I am here to report to you that Masjid al-Rahma, which was attacked twice, and Masjid al-Tawheed, which was fully burned down, received little to no support from either our allies or state, city, and county officials. We have also reported that due to these incidents, many mosques and community leaders have asked us and have encouraged us to find ways to support. While we're glad at Cair, Minnesota, that we now have a community safety specialist who is working tirelessly day and night to work with our local mosques in accessing resources, in providing trainings, we are still feeling that at any moment, the vulnerability of our mosques may come to light. I want to share with everyone who's watching today that while we are in this dark time and dark moment, that our organization at Cair, Minnesota is here to provide support, to provide education and awareness, and to be hope for our community in this time. Even though we may not be able to respond to everything in the way that we would like, we are here to provide as much support as possible. We want to provide today 10 clear recommendations in addition to the report. First and foremost, we are encouraging our community to be vigilant, especially in this time. We have noticed the increase of attacks, and we have seen the increase of vulnerability in our community. We are asking for our community, especially in these last few nights of Ramadan, to reach out to each other and talk about what is happening, whether it's at work, at school, or around the community. And if there are incidents that have not been reported, we are asking our community to report to us. With a coalition last year, we introduced legislation that helps in efforts of reporting hate crimes with the support of community organizations like ourselves at Cair. We want to also, 3, recognize that we can support those who are facing discrimination, and we believe that by reaching out to Cair, Minnesota, we can provide that support. Number 4, and perhaps maybe even the most important request, we call on our allies to actively support their Muslim neighbors and colleagues. We ask them to reach out to their Muslim and Jewish colleagues in this time in an effort to understand what they're going through, what they're hiding, and how they can be supportive, including being upstanders and bystanders in times of incidents. We are now learning about attacks and other types of discrimination and bullying from allies when Muslims themselves feel a sense of no direction or a sense of the fact that they may not be able to self-advocate. In addition, we are today also asking law enforcement agencies across the state of Minnesota to pay a closer attention to crimes that are happening in our community where bias may not be clearly painted, but bias is at the heart of those incidents. We are aware of 2 particular deaths in our community that we are troubled and concerned about. While we may not be able to provide full details, based on some information that we have, we want to rule out the possibility that the current environment may have resulted in the death of those individuals, one here in Minnesota and one in Wisconsin. We are asking leaders of this country, leaders of the state and this country, leaders in the private sector, public sector, we are asking leaders in the faith community, we need your voices today. We're asking you to make plans and condemn Islamophobia and anti-Semitism in the most positive way you can. We need public condemnations and awareness about the plight of Muslims and Jews in this country today. The best thing we can do is to speak out against hate so that we find and create an environment that is inclusive and safe for our communities. Number 7, as an organization, we are unable to respond because we need resources to increase in staffing to be able to respond to the overwhelming needs that our community is facing today. And we're encouraging everyone who has supported our organization in Cair, Minnesota, to once again become supporters of Cair, Minnesota. And there are 2 clear ways you can. You can go to our website and donate generously, whether it's a small amount or a large amount or a monthly support or a one-time giving. We're also asking for those who are interested, who have the time, to become volunteers, to be able to help us in this time. Number 8, we are launching a public awareness campaign about countering Islamophobia. And we will be looking to partner with organizations, companies, and others in helping us overcome the challenges of Islamophobia today in our environment. Number 9, today we are announcing the continuation and the 4th annual Challenging Islamophobia community. I've been at Cair, Minnesota now for over 9 years, and I've never seen what I'm seeing today. And I'm troubled and concerned as this report outlines the history of our Cair community, the highest amount of incidents. What this report also identifies is the continuation of the trend of an increase, not a decrease. And that is why we are asking today for everyone to play their role in undermining the tsunami of hate that has taken over our communities, that is making us unsafe, unwelcomed, and are projecting a great deal. And finally, I'll end with this. Islamophobia is a racism at its core. And we must fight racism as a community. I am deeply concerned about the internalization of Islamophobia, the mental health of our Muslim community, and the impact that this will have on generations to come. And therefore, we cannot wait, stay silent, or ignore this moment. This report is nothing but an indication and a validation of what many of our community are feeling today. There is hope. We are here to stay. We're here to make Minnesota a more welcoming environment, but we need everyone for their support in this time.
Thank you, Chelani. And now I'm going to call Rukia Abdi, who's a community member, librarian, and also community leader in our community, and talk about her own experience.
Hello, thank you for having me. And my name is Rukia Abdi, R-U-Q-I-A, last name A-B-D-I. As a Muslim woman living in this country, I really want to emphasize the importance of this organization first. And I want to thank them, the work they're doing. There are a lot of organizations that are doing amazing work, but Cair is doing a practical work that if you search up on Google, you will see what they're doing. But at the same time, how do I see as a Muslim? Right. And Islamophobia is real. It existed before. But why are we talking about right now? Because Islamophobia became more right now as a result of what's happening in Gaza, that we cannot say, oh, what is that? Can you say a little more about that? Everybody can see, but at the same time, Islamophobia or religion is being used as a weapon in order to achieve some political gain. And I have to say that because this is not impacting only Muslim community, it's impacting every conscious person in America. Cair, Minnesota, and Cair in the nation, nationally, what they're doing is saying what's happening. Islamic value is embedded in this organization, as well as American value. You have to speak up. We have First Amendment at the same time. We're afraid to talk, right? Cair is giving us the platform to say what we are feeling and to help us get who can also help us. At the same time, schools, workplaces, and also in the street, and we're facing Islamophobia. Right now, the Islamophobia became international, and people are watching us. What I want, whatever we said, the report is clear right now, but at the same time, you have your own research methodology that you can figure out. But I want to ask the Muslim community in the United States and in Minnesota to please report what you see. Before, I used to think it's okay to report when it's just too much. You can, leave it, just forget, because patient is being emphasized more in the Islamic and religion. We have to be patient. We have to just let it go. But now it's becoming really impacting our mental health, right? I want to ask the Muslims to report, especially women. It's very obvious we have hijab, right? You can see, people can see us, and things can happen. And then going home, we are dealing with our youth. Our youth have more energy, and they're dealing with other people. But at the same time, if they see what they see, and we don't talk to them, it's even gonna have a negative impact in our society. This makes our allies to come and support this organization. Who are our allies? I'm not gonna say color, whether it's white or black or yellow, because as a Muslim, I'm not allowed to use a color in order to assign a negativity to an individual. Every person has a good personality. But what I'm saying is allies, non-Muslim, that's what I mean. The work Cair is doing is very clear, but how can you help? And how can you know if what they're doing is something that resonates with you? You can see what's happening in Gaza. Islamophobia was happening here, but now it amplified, right? Now you can see Cair amplify the work. It's adding more activities in order to achieve what we need and to engage our community. And when October 7 and war started, and everything became like upside down, right? Many people started helping out, but you can see right now as our administration keeps going, no matter how we scream, people are a little bit taking 2 steps back. There is like nothing we can do. There is something we can do. We hear God bless America. We hear a lot of stuff. In Islam, we don't separate things. One time it's a political, one thing is and one time we're worshiping. Our mosques are attacked, right? We need support because that's a maintenance that we need to do. That's a place of worship that we need support because it's integral like institution in our community. Cair doesn't work like stand-alone organization. It cooperates, it partners with other people. What are you gonna get out of this? When you help Cair, you're amplifying our voices, and you're also helping the youth who are going really a mental turmoil right now. They're going through a trauma. I remember after October 7, I called several community members, including Jewish leaders and Jelani, including, and because of what's happening is something that I can see as someone who works with the youth, with families. I can see the negativity that come up. I said, what can we do? Yes, this is happening. And then whatever our administration decided to do comes after that. But I said, what can we do in order to keep our youth healthy? And then the answers that I got was amazing, right? One thing that I remember, and Jelan, is people are watching this thing. They're showing me wherever I am, this happening. And it impacted me too. Graphics of killings that's happening in Gaza, which is still something that's an issue, right? And Jelani said, tell them not to watch, but youth, like whatever you say, they're going to do it, right? But then at the same time, tell them to do this thing, activities, right? And now protests started, create these posters so that they can protest, they can talk. All these things is a platform that Cair created. Cair is the community, whether it's Muslim or not. But right now, this is Islamophobia being used as a weapon, and it has nothing to do. But those activities started like relieving and the community and the youth. Up to right now, people are feeling good talking about it, but talking about it is not only enough, right? And you have a certain a threshold to keep going, right? As Franklin Covey mentioned this in the seven habits of highly effective people. It's like you have to sharpen the saw. You have to have a gasoline in order to keep driving your car. This organization is really doing amazing work. I want to conclude that we don't want to keep seeing humans are being slaughtered right now in front of us. I cannot bring example because I'm so emotional person, but what I want to conclude is we need your support, because any nation, the administration can decide something and we have our voice, but we need to remember one thing. If you look all the history, and it's real in our value, citizens and followers are really amazing, and trying to come together, arranging process, and also asking a ceasefire that's taking forever. Because of that movement, God is gonna place us. We're not gonna get the punishment, but at the same time, we're talking to our leaders that this is unfortunately something that's huge mistake, and I'm thankful for our American citizens who are really standing up, going everywhere. That's good for our emotional and psychological support. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ruvia. That was a very passionate, emotionally speech. I just want to add a couple of things. I think I just took from Ruvia is that I think it's been now 6 months since the war started in Gaza, and one of the things that I've seen in the community as we are getting those intake cases from different community members is that social media, right? People writing something on social media, and there has been also a lot of online attack that is not reported, some of the cases that have not been reported, and people don't even know if those are actually hate crimes or how to report that. And another thing that is happening is that normalization or normalizing the what is happening right now in the community, but at the same time, the hate crime and Islamophobia is actually going up. So, and the average person is kind of making normal, and that now the war has been going on for a while and it's in the news. So that's kind of like what I take out of just the speech that Rukia just give as a community member, and that's what we see while we're out in the community. So I just want to make sure that we take some questions if you have, and we can answer them either about the report or about the work that we do at the Cair.
So you said this is like the most incidents you've had ever, right? How does it compare in the last couple of years, like with the Muslim ban? Like, is this number just like far exceeding years past?
Yeah, I think. Yeah. So if you look at some of the previous numbers, you could clearly see that this is the highest jump. I think the last time was President Trump that we remember. We saw the Muslim ban, and there was an increase there. We're talking about almost double of that. So, and I think I wanted to highlight 56% since the last, but I wanted to just highlight that that there's a lot more that are not being captured here. Increasingly, a lot more, and I'm deeply concerned about the rate of internalization of Islamophobia within the Muslim community, meaning that Muslims are now willing to let go a great deal of harm and not report that and not even consider that as hate crime. And I believe that that will translate into people being numbed into being accepting that type of behavior. While adults can manage that, I'm deeply concerned also what happened to students and kids, predominantly in spaces in school districts that have lower amount of diversity. Yep.
Just clarifying, in terms of the national trend, would you say Minnesota matches that?
Yes, Minnesota matches it, and Minnesota is also unique. We've had some of the most higher profile cases when it comes to mosque attacks, including freedom of speech, the lawsuit that we have requested the Department of Education to investigate, which they're investigating one of the schools now. We obviously are concerned about some of the other schools as well, and also attacks against individuals as well, which is something that we've seen. You'll see even in the highlight that those two are featured in the report.
When it does come to the classification of, in your eyes, a hate crime, do you feel like it's being taken seriously enough, whether it be like politicians, law enforcement? What's your take?
There are two types of ways we see seriousness. One is obviously law enforcement. I know that majority of law enforcement agencies are not fully trained on having the type of training that they need to be able to identify hate crime. Not all hate crimes are going to have a swastika. You're not going to show up and be very clear. We've seen that before in other cases where individuals who are caught committing a hate crime later say a different story, but then sometimes when the FBI has resources and they're able to look at the data of this person, their online practice, what they're doing, and then we find out that this person was actually engaged in hate crime. So a lot of the times there's also resources that law enforcement need, but also training. We're glad to report that last year a bill did pass to help that. That hasn't really fully been exercised yet. That's one aspect. The other aspect that I'm deeply concerned about is the lack of response from the general public. Usually when we see these incidents, there is a general response that helps create a sense of a community non-acceptable behavior. Non-acceptable, that in Minnesota, if you do that, more of your neighbors are going to be aware, more of your neighbors are going to care, more of your neighbors are going to signal to the rest of the population that this is not only acceptable, but there's going to be consequences. And those consequences may not be in the public, in our court system, it might even be privately. And so what we're noticing is that a lot of that has tapered. It's almost non-existent. The two mosques that have been fully burned, we've put out social media, we put it out into community. A lot of our local media covered it, but it did not translate into financial support, other types of support that we usually have seen much more in during the 4 years of President Trump. The 4 years of President, we saw a great deal of outcry when incidents of hate crimes happened toward the Muslim community. Since then, we have almost seen none. In fact, we've seen a huge increase in more visible attacks like our mosques, and in also assaults on the individual. So it's a two-story thing. We want law enforcement to be able to take it seriously, but we also need the public to also be responsive. And that creates a sense of a community shared way of responding to this. Unfortunately, we have not seen that, and we're worried about, in this light of what we're seeing, the magnitude of cases, that we're not even getting traction on some of these issues.
One of your recommendations is related to law enforcement. Could you go back to that one?
Yeah, so we're encouraging law enforcement to be vigilant, specifically when incidents are involving a Muslim or a Jewish person, even if that initial incident on face value may not appear to be a hate crime, to be able to make sure you rule it out. We are concerned that people are masking assaults and other things with the idea and the intent of hate. And so therefore, if you just simply look at it from a narrow view, you may not be able to see the fact that this incident occurred because of these two individuals. We know in the last 4 years of President Trump, there were a lot of people who were being driven off the road. Someone tried to assault him in that way. And those incidents are oftentimes not even reported. But when they are reported, that they should be taken seriously, because this person, if they're willing to do that on the road, they're probably more willing to do other things. As I mentioned to you, that gentleman who was assaulted in front of one of the local big stores, there was witnesses, people saw, but no one was able to get to the point where they reported it, make sure Now, obviously, he looked like he was fine afterwards, but later on when he went home, his legs swelled up and he needed to be taken care of. And so that's just a highlight of what's happening. I don't know how many more of those are happening in our community right now. But that's why we want to really make sure that law enforcement are not sidestepping it. I also mentioned that because we do have 2 incidents, one in Wisconsin and one in Minnesota, that we're not ready to share everything, but we are concerned about those 2 deaths having something to relate it with the current environment. We can't ignore that with the facts that we know, and we can't say that yet until we rule out those facts. But right now we're looking at everything.
Are you able to speak on one of those?
Yeah, in the last few months. Yes, in the last few months.
I would like to add a little bit about the reported incidents, and there are many unreported ones, right? That are happening, especially and those who are working in the entry level and their entry level employees, and if they leave, they're afraid financially, right? If they say something, but it's clear for them, it's related. The other thing is schools. We have a lot of and issues that's coming from the mothers that I deal with, but at the same time, they are afraid at the same time because of they have to move. If they take out their child from that school, that's the safety thing that they could do. But here, the educators, the teachers, schools need to be very vigilant. Again, this is reality. Youth, if they suppress things, they can do negative things. One of my biggest concern is we're suppressing emotions and what's happening in front of us. Let them express in the essays. Let them say what they need to say because they need to say, and then that is just saying, right? And what can we do as a citizens? That's a different road. And so, and when the bystanders also, for example, if they speak up, if they say this is not acceptable. Like yesterday, one of a community member who runs an amazing organization is received a mail, and then inside there are hate statements directly, and I don't want to say those words. So when we report those things, what's going to happen? Something that's called a vicarious reinforcement. The one who wants to commit will be ashamed because of this is going to be in the media. So we need to escalate and mention again and again that this is not acceptable. Thank you.
So in terms of the mental health impact on youth, can you speak to some of the things? Obviously, there's a lot of stuff that will come up down the line,
Right.
and things that are being suppressed, but just some of the things that you're presently hearing.
Well, so first of all, we've had these incidents. We've had an incident where a middle schooler was kept in a principal office for nearly 40 minutes. And the only way she was able to leave that room was because she falsely said that she was going to cancel the protest that she was doing. I know for sure that there are a lot more students that want to engage. They're not even comfortable even engaging. In addition to that, as Usman mentioned, we are seeing a lot more anonymous-ish hate online. We've seen our office, we don't even report now as much, but in our office we get a daily, sometimes once or twice, significant level of hate mail, and I know that's happening everywhere, and that has continues to change here and there when it comes to that. We know that reports that have surveys that have been done in the last few years, even before the war in Gaza, we know that 1 in 5 Muslim children were reported to not self-identify as a Muslim, afraid of the fact that they would be bullied. And this was obviously a national report that was done. I know California has also a report that looks into school bullying, among other aspects. And so what we do know here in Minnesota is that Minnesota generally has become a very welcoming environment, especially in our school systems. But when these incidents come up, we've noticed that those safeguards that we saw throughout the year almost sometimes are non-existent. And the type of administrative actions that are being taken against our students, when similar situated incidents, schools are oftentimes not as that engaging, or perhaps they're not as interested in holding certain policies to a certain level of engagement or a certain level of accountability. So we're seeing that type of I would say, bias in how they approach these different issues, how they monitor student behavior, how they're almost surveilling the Muslim students and any student who may engage in free speech, let alone. We've heard from families who are telling us school board members are emailing them about their children's social media messages. I mean, that level of type of surveillance is completely unacceptable, where school board members are saying, hey, did you see what your daughter put out online? Well, how did you even know? What are you doing checking my daughter's social media feed? And even what they're saying, the students are saying, is not even something that is any of us would, well, most of us here standing would not even consider that to be not only not a hate speech, but even anything. It would just be general. It's like, don't let your children get involved in actively speaking out about what is happening in Gaza. Let them be just silent in the background. And I feel that that is where the crux of our mental health is, when students feel they have lost their voice because not only the people that they relied on supporting them in their ability to have that voice are against them, but also even their own peers and people around them are also creating that. And I think that's a double layer of trauma that you have to deal with, where at times if you say something, your peers may come after you. But now not only your peers may come after you, the administrators are going to come after you. And students feel now that they're no longer, the fact that their religious identity is a liability in the environments that they thought were inclusive and safe.
So does the First Amendment kind of issues that you're seeing, is that also kind of following the trend of, like, before was it not as much, but now it's spiking more?
Absolutely. It's not even close. I think there's a lot more of that happening that we're not even reaching that. A lot of the times the cases that we're seeing is when something really has layered at that peak. But there's a lot of people who are, I've consulted with folks who are, hey, I'm about to put out this statement, and it's a generic statement. And then people are just even worried about making that statement. Others are worried about, my daughter who is in this school said this, how will it affect me at my profession at work? And we've had that where professionals will say, hey, your daughter signed on to that statement. Like, how does that have anything to do at my work? My daughter's, she's free, she can do what she wants, that's her, right? And so we're seeing that, and it's like this surveillance that's happening. And then sadly, but a reality is that there is an overwhelming acceptance to the fact that you are being targeted. So many Muslims are, even if there is no targeting, they are feeling the brunt of it. And so they're anticipating it and looking for the shadows and immediately clinching. And that's what we talk about, this internalization of fear, that people are so worried that they heard the story that happened to this person at work. They're already feeling it at their own work. So now they start looking for things that are said, then they confirm that bias and are afraid of the fact of the next steps. And that's part of that. What we are asking for is this: we need a public education to challenge Islamophobia, so Muslims and Jews feel comfortable enough to be themselves and to be able to know that they can advocate for the things that many of us are our shared agreed values among all communities. And I feel like right now there's a brunt end. And for the first time, like I said, I'm hearing from people we've never heard from. People who are in comfortable corporate positions who do not know if they are welcomed anymore after what is happening. And if they sit in that meeting, if they say something, how will that be translated? Where there is a free of range for those who are advocating for some of the aspects of the Zionism and other things, they can do whatever one, but Muslims do not feel that they can even say a quarter of anything that would not even equate to that level. You know, glorifying violence, Muslims cannot glorify violence at all. But other people are glorifying violence with no consequence. I don't care what kind of violence it is, but if you're glorifying any form of violence, of killing anybody, especially what we're seeing now in Gaza, there should be a limitation, especially in a work environment. Muslims cannot even, they will be fired if they mention anything about what is happening over there that's much more violent, other than stop the violence. Even the stop the violence has now become politicized. You can't say stop the violence, because if you say stop the violence, you may also somehow feel that you may lose your job. And I think that is really where we're losing. We're not just losing in these higher profile cases where we see the vandalism of our mosques, you know, people being physically assaulted, people physically being targeted, but also just these underlayer that is, you know, microaggressions and macroaggressions that are happening daily basis, where people are no longer operating the way they were. You know, things happen outside my work, but I felt safe at my work. I didn't feel like every meeting I went into, I was going to be asked or judged by one thing or the other. So But that's why we're asking our community to reach out to us if they have questions and concerns. We're asking for community partners. We're asking for corporate companies and others to begin working with us in helping us with this public narrative that we need to create to fight and overcome challenges. Is that good?
Yeah, I would like just.
Yes.
what you said
Yes,
before
sure,
after.
sure, sure. Anybody else?